Champion Dynamics International. And we have been doing that for 20 something years, or we have, but we've been pastoring for 20 something years. Trying to get rid of this recording thing here, right? Um, and yes, we do have a lot of experience. I do have a lot of experience counseling and helping people, women especially. So tonight we are going to talk about being healed from your past. And what I realized, even for my own life, that you think sometimes that just walking away from something or just putting something behind means that you have healed and you're over it, and you realize that when something comes up in the future, something kind of, you have like triggers, which we'll talk about, you realize, wait, now I am not actually over this. You thought you were over it, but then you realize, wait, now what, it have secret compartments in my heart or something? What is things still doing there? How many of you all thought you were over something, and then you were presented with some scenario situation, you realize that, whoa, this thing is still affecting me, I just didn't realize it? How many of you could say, put that in the comments, say yes, right? Amelia, say one time me, and it actually kind of shocked you. You're like, whoa, I didn't know that was there. And it really kind of, right. So a lot of people saying yes, that is good. A lot of people saying yes. It's kind of true. It's thrown me off, because you know, I would think, well, yeah, man, I could deal with that. I could deal with those things. I could just put that behind me until a situation presents itself and you realize, okay, I actually did not deal with this thing. So tonight, ladies, I really want to be able to help you all to move forward in life, have new relationships, fruitful relationships, healthy relationships, and not bringing your past into those things. And we don't necessarily mean only romantic relationships, but I know that is the area that you may be affected the most, but it could be any relationship, in your life. It could be with your children. It could be with co-workers. Some people have issues with friends. They realize that, how many of you realize that in all your friendships, it always ends up it always ends with some drama. Like, there's always drama. All of your friendships, it's either some confusion or whatever. And you're like, how? And you keep asking yourself to, how all my relationships end up like this. And one thing that you have to realize, ladies, if you are caught in a cycle like that and all your relationships end up the same way or end the same way, or there's always something common, some confusion, the common thing there is you, ladies. It can't be that everybody have issues. You are the common issue. And so, we're going to have to deal with that tonight, right? I don't know, for those of you who are new, especially, Celeste mentioned, that this is in connection with Women's Freedom Foundation. And also, well, as I said, my husband and I are pastors. And so in this forum, yes, we discuss natural things, and I'm going to not only talk to you about spiritual, but also natural. But I never leave out the spiritual. I can't, because I don't know, again, you all could say in the comments, I don't know how many of you realize there's always a spiritual link. And sometimes you try to ignore that aspect of it, and you try to leave God out of your life and out of your issues, and you realize that, you can't do that either. Sometimes you realize it's actually a spiritual root, something that is causing this, these issues in your life and these relationships. So I am going to be referring to scriptures and to what God says, in the scriptures, things that will be able to help you all. And I want to encourage those of you listening, if you do not have a relationship with God, and I am not talking about joining a religion, I'm not talking about joining my church or any other church or even the church I'm talking about having a relationship with God, a personal relationship with God, is the most beneficial thing, ladies, you can do for yourself. He has the answers to every situation that you could face in your life, and he can help you, right? So I want to start by reading. This is in Psalms 34. The reason why I'm starting with this scripture, I want to show you all how interested and how invested God is, even in your hurts. And that, that I don't want you all to ever think that you are alone. Even if you might feel abandoned by your family, your friends, your coworker, your husband, your children, even, that, I want you all to know that God has a special interest in those who are hurt. So this is Psalm 34, reading verse 17 and 18. It says, the righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them and delivers them out of their troubles. The Lord is near to those who have a broken heart. Any one of you could attest to that, could type in the comments, Onika, I've had a broken heart in the past, or right now it's broken, right? You have a broken heart. God is saying that he is near to those who have a broken heart, and he saves those whose spirits have been crushed. You ever felt crushed? How many of you have ever felt crushed? You felt like if broken. You felt like what, just sometimes you might actually even feel not to exist, right? Oh my God, somebody said right now their heart is bleeding. Well, this psalm is good news for you. God says that he's near to you. He actually, what he's saying in this psalm is that he's taken a special interest in you, right? Now, God loves everyone, right? But he's saying that those who are crushed in spirit, those who are going through hurt, those who are going through troubles, he says he's near to you. Ladies, isn't that good news to know that he's near to you? Now, to you, you might be listening to that and saying, how God being near to me, helping me practically? Well, I can't see him. Well, God, where are you? He near where, right? Now, the only way you would look at it like that is if you really don't know him personally, and you have not let him in to your heart, that you haven't let him in even to your hurts and to your issues, to the deep things, right? But once you do that, you realize how near God is and how invested, ladies, he is in your brokenness. But he's not just, listen, the beautiful thing about God, he's not just invested in it. He's not just there to, Michelle, maybe you could give us some, some, a little testimony of how you overcame later on, because I want you to have an opportunity to talk, to share, to ask questions at the end, right? But I love to hear testimony. So Michelle, if you're up to it, you could tell us how you overcame, how God helped you through. But not only is he near to you, ladies, he wants to deliver you, right? So I'm going to try to help you tonight with practical things, but let me let you all know that my tips and the things that I'm going to say to you tonight will help you if you take heed to them. But God is really the answer to your brokenness, and he wants to deliver you. He wants to heal your brokenness. He don't just want to be near, human beings could really only, they might give you a little pat on your back. Well, this is not your back, this is your head. They give you a little pat on your back and say, it will be all right, it'll be all right. But God could actually fix it, right? God is the one who has the answers and who can actually fix the issues, right? So that was Psalm 34. And if any of you have never read that psalm, you could go and read it. It will certainly bring you comfort. And it's not just good reading, guys. This is to be believed. This is truth. And this is what God is saying he could offer you, right? So I want to read one other scripture, and then we're going to get into the body of tonight's session, right? This is in 1 Peter chapter 5. It says, stay alert. Watch out for your enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Stand firm against him and be strong in your faith. Remember that your family of believers all around the world is going through the same kind of suffering as you are. Now, the suffering that I was speaking about here, it's not perhaps the same type of suffering that we might be going through in this region. Their suffering was persecution. They were being killed. They were being persecuted. They could not openly confess Jesus. They had to hide it. We don't have, that's not the kind of suffering we are going through. But this still does relate to us, because we all go through our own personal types of suffering and hurt, pain and heartache and trauma, which is what we're talking about tonight, right? But sometimes the enemy makes you feel that you are isolated and you are the only one going through the situation. This scripture is actually saying, remember that people all around the world, they're going through the same suffering as you, right? It says, but God in his kindness called you to share in his eternal glory by means of Christ Jesus. So after, listen to this part, ladies, after you have suffered a little while, he will restore, he will support, he will strengthen you, and he will place you on a firm foundation. All power to him forever. Right? Ladies, did you all hear that? Now, again, I want you all, this is not just, the Bible is not just good reading. This is life. This is truth. And what God is saying here is that we all go through hurts, we all go through suffering, we all deal with pain. But what God is able to do is to restore us, to support us, to strengthen us, and then to place us now on a firm foundation. And that firm foundation is very important, because when he comes now, after you've been hurt and he restores and he fixes and he heals and all that, when he sets you on a firm foundation, thank you, Kimberly, the next time that you're faced with some kind of trauma or pain or some situation in your life, you're not going to fall. You're going to be on a firm foundation, so you're able to stand and withstand that thing, right? Whatever that situation is, right? So, ladies, this is wonderful news. This is great. If men fail you, even the people that you might love and close to you fail you in your times of brokenness, know that God never will, and he's able to restore, support, strengthen, and keep you on a firm foundation, right? And this is, as Kimberly said, this is First Peter chapter 5, verse 8 to 11, right? So you all could check that out yourself. So we started on a beautiful note, ladies. We know that God has our back and he's able to help us. He has the solutions. And oh my gosh, if you all go through the Bible, and it's so easy now, and Google and the internet has made it so easy. Just Google scriptures that help me with hurts or pain, and you believe it and you read it and you actually do what it says. You'd feel encouraged just by reading it. You feel encouraged to know that God is with you, right? So let's get into it. Ladies, feel free to take notes, because a lot of these things are going to help you. You know, so it's good to remember, because how many of you all figured out by now, right, that life is not perfect, and you're always going to be dealing with hurts. You're always going to be dealing with Carrie, the first one I read was Psalm 34, verse 17 and 18. And the second one was First Peter chapter 5, verse 8 to 11, right? Yeah. So ladies, by now you figured out you can't run from hurt. I'm sure you figured it out. There's nowhere that you can hide or go. People try to run, they try to go to another country, they try, you can't. Even the Bible says it. We all suffer. We all go through trials and tribulations and situations and heartache, right? It's not something you could hide from, right? So with that said, we have to learn how to deal with it. We have to learn how to move on from hurts, right? And to move on, and not only move on, but learn, and also try to avoid making the same mistakes and ending up in cycles in our lives, right? So ladies, it is no good. It's not a good thing to dismiss your hurts and trauma. How many of you are trying to dismiss your hurts instead of dealing with it? And by that, dismiss, you take a don't care attitude to it and you just try to move on. No good. No good. No, don't do it. You can't dismiss it, right? Do not minimize your emotions. Don't try to suppress, right? Don't try to say, well, even you're feeling the hurt, you're feeling the pain, and you want to express it, you want to cry, but your solution might be to get busy and say, okay, I'm just gonna forget that. I'm not gonna deal with that. I can't deal with that right now. How many of you all said, I can't see that? I can't deal with that right now. But the problem is sometimes you say that, but you never end up dealing with it, right? So it is not, Donna said, yes, me. I've done that many times. You just don't want to deal. So you throw it in the back somewhere in some compartment in your brain or in your heart, and you try to move on, right? Rather, listen, if you have to cry, cry, right? If in the moment you are hurt, it's a, you know, it's a natural response to cry if you feel hurt if somebody, especially somebody you love, hurt you, right? Rather than trying to do things to distract you or to numb the pain or try to keep yourself busy, right? That is not the answer. That does help momentarily, right? Many people do that, right? Tiffany says she suck it up and ignore it. So Tiffany, you will want to pay attention tonight because sucking it up and ignoring it don't mean you're healed. It just means you're suppressing whatever is there. And trust me, it coming back up to bite you. It coming, right? Because that's not dealing with it, right? That's just trying to dismiss it, right? So some people try to distract, they numb, or they keep busy. What you need to do is start from a place of intention, right? If you want healing from your hurt or even for a change, right? Ladies, listen to me. If you want healing from your hurts, or if you want to transform your life, you want to change, you want a complete change, you want to do things differently, then you must act with purposeful intention, right? Ignoring it, and all the ladies who say, yes, me, I ignore it, I just suppress it, or I try to numb the pain. How many of you all have tried to numb the pain with either alcohol or parties or another partner? Sometimes you move on quick, right? How many of you all have ever been in a tabanka relationship, right? Basically, a tabanka relationship is not dealing with hurts. It's actually a cover-up, the tabanka. Anybody ever been in a tabanka relationship? You get mashed up bad, you get hurt, and you move on quick, and you think that this new relationship will take away the hurt from that past relationship, but it doesn't, right? Most times what happens, that person you're in a relationship would suffer because you're really just, you're kind of using them in a kind of a way, excuse me, to get over your ex, right? That's not dealing. Moving on quickly into a next relationship is not, that's not proof, ladies, that you're over him. That rebound, yes, as Makeda said, right? People might look at you and say, oh, she get over, he fast, boy. What she didn't even take a good month. Look, she move on, right? You may have moved on to another man, but your heart, you haven't been healed and you have not actually moved on in your heart or even in your mind. You've just done it physically and it's just a cover, right? So rather than doing things to distract, numb, right? Alcohol is not a solution, right? Deeper problems, very well said. Rebound relationships, it puts you, listen, in deeper crap, right? You just get deeper, right? Keeping busy is not the answer. Attempting to change, ladies, change yourself without being intentional during the process, it will not be successful in what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to change, if you say, you know what, I wanna change who I am. I realize that I keep in cycles, I keep moving on. But in the moment, you're not dealing with what's happening with your present emotions, your current situation. Some people don't like dealing with what's happened currently. They just want to jump ahead, right? You have to be intentional about what's happening now and deal with it, right? And dealing with it, ladies, is not always pleasant. It could be a painful process for you. It requires transparency. It requires you dealing with these emotions, the toxic ones. It might mean you might feel vulnerable, and nobody likes to feel that way, like, oh gosh, like a vulnerable or weak, but there are times when you just need to be open with yourself about your toxic emotions and feelings and deal with it. Ask yourself serious questions, right? Why do I always end up in this situation? Why do I always end up with this type of guy? Why is it that I always find myself with these types of friends who use me? Why, ask yourself questions and start to face the reality of what the answers perhaps might be. Because another thing that I have discovered, ladies, right? There's no way of getting around this, right? Even in the Bible, I was actually thinking about it in terms biblically. And there's nowhere really in the Bible where God tells us to blame anybody or to put the responsibility of our life, our well-being, our salvation, even on somebody else, right? Well, salvation was taken care of us through Jesus, but we still have to accept it, right? So it still comes down to me accepting it. What we try to do, ladies, many times, instead of taking responsibility, we look for answers outside, externally. Okay, it must be that this person this, it must be that when I was growing up, this was the problem. And all these things might be true, but the solution doesn't lie with them. How many of you realize, even if you're, listen, even if your ex come and say, girl, here what's going on, I was wrong, girl. I was wrong. What do you? I should not do that, right? I mean, yeah, he tell you he's sorry, but that not fixing. You still feeling the hurt, don't you? You still have the memory of him going with that other woman, or you still have the memory of the coffee thing, or the words he said to pull you down, the hurtful things. You still have those things to deal with, right? So even him coming and saying he's sorry, that's not the answer, right? That's not the answer. So it lies with you within. So it's something that you have to deal with. And so you can't throw blame, right? So ladies, no throwing blame, right? Forget the blame game, right? Listen to this, right? Everything that hurts us, makes us feel powerless or convinced that we are not enough, we are worthless, we are sinful, right? Think about the relationships or the things that have hurt you in the past, right? If they've made you feel worthless, unworthy, they've made you feel sinful, they've made you feel powerless, sometimes as a woman, they've made you feel like you have no real value, right? And sometimes this is what it hurts, or it makes you feel inferior, like you're less than, that you're not good enough, right? All these things I'm sure you all could relate to, right? Anytime you have those feelings from some past hurt, ladies, it needs to be worked through. It needs to be dealt with if you want to have healthy relationships in the future and you want to have a peaceful life. So even without the relationship, so even if you don't ever go into another relationship, even just dealing with you, me, myself, and I, you have to deal with those things. So even if you say, you know what, I'm not going into no other relationship no time soon, you would realize that that's still not going to mean that you're going to be healed or feel peaceful. You have to deal with those things, right? Those feelings of worthlessness, of less value, are not good enough, are not pretty enough, are not intelligent enough, are not are probably, why do I always end up in sin? Why do I always, all those things, and you're feeling like, well, I'm a sinner and no good. They have to be dealt with, ladies. Those things have to be dealt with. You have to be intentional about dealing with those things. You cannot just move on, right? And say, well, that done, let me just move on without dealing with those feelings. If you still have those feelings, right? You will find that ignoring the hurt that you're feeling and trying to move forward without dealing with it only works for so long, right? As I said, the cover-ups work for a short while, but eventually you will be triggered. As long as life, how many of you all know life is not perfect, right? And so as long as things are not going, if things going perfect, whatever your perfect is, right? Once they're going smooth and perfect, you could feel like you're over it. How many of you all understand what I'm saying? You could feel like you're over it because everything's perfect. Hey, and some people, even when they're in that stage, they knock on wood. They knock on wood. They say, whoosh, things are going good, boy, knock on wood. It's like you almost expect that it's going to end soon. Ayana, exactly. You're fooling yourself. Not because you're going through a period of things seeming to be normal. It means that you're healed and you're fixed, right? So as long as things go perfect, it seems fine. But guess what, ladies? You are going to be triggered if you have not dealt with your hurts, right? And you have to know what these triggers are. You have to be able to identify them and deal with them because they are going to come, because human beings are not perfect, right? And I think most people know what a trigger is, right? But a trigger is something that might set off a memory or a flashback that almost takes you back to the original event that hurt you, right? It's like it literally kind of almost takes you back triggers are very personal. Different things trigger different people, right? You may be trying to avoid a situation, or thing or a person or a place that you think will cause a flashback or cause a trigger. Now, when I was preparing for this today, it reminded me of when my mom passed away. At that time I was living in St. Joseph, Maracas, St. Joseph. And my mom passed away in Medical Associates, which, if you know St. Joseph, it had no other way to pass but to pass. Is there another way? Anyway, perhaps, but yeah. Going up that road there to get into Maracas St. Joseph, you have to pass Medical Associates, right? And it took me a while to realize, and I was actually there when my mom passed away, right? So it was a bit traumatic seeing that, right? It took me a while, and it actually took me a while to even realize that I was doing it. Every time I passed Medical Associates to go home, I would not look at it. I would keep my head straight. If I was driving, I certainly wouldn't. I would try to not look, right? If I wasn't driving, I would turn my head the other way, because I'd rather not see it, because seeing it would be trigger a memory, right? And so for a very long time, I did that. And in fact, even to go in Medical Associates, I remember once my dad had asked me to go to pay off a bill. And I remember thinking, so it was the first time I would have had to go back inside. And I remember thinking, gosh, I'd rather not. I really just literally just rather not. I did not want to have to, because I knew going there would have definitely brought back memories, right? And I didn't want to deal with it. So it's not that, I wouldn't say that I was still grieving for my mom or anything, but I did not want to have to deal with the memory. I just didn't want to have to deal with it any moment. So I was just avoiding it, right? But I mean, it's not practical, because I lived there for a while. I ended up having to go there many times for different reasons. So I got over it eventually, but in the beginning, I tried to avoid it at all costs, because I knew that seeing it would have triggered certain emotions and memories, right? And so you all know what your triggers can be, right? Emotional, right? Right. A person's triggers are activated through their senses, one or more sense: sight, sound, touch, smell, taste, right? The senses that are most common would be sight and sound. Like, if you see certain things, you hear sometimes simple thing like music, but all of your senses can be a trigger. How many of you, I don't want to take all your back or ask, how many of you all, you used to, let's say, date somebody and they would wear a particular cologne, and when you smell the cologne, what's happened, right? Somebody say yes, gosh, music. Yeah, you and your boyfriend had a favorite song. When you hear that song, what you feel to do now is mash up the radio or whatever it is you hear, and you want to destroy the you don't want to hear it. It no longer brings you the joy. Oh gosh, like somebody said, I call this the new again. Might be such a bad thing, right? Yeah, music, cologne and music. Camila saying yes, cologne and music, right? So smell, touch, sound, and many things that could trigger, right? You have to identify them, ladies. You have to identify them and not try to, because these triggers, right? We're talking about things like cologne and stuff, but let me give you an example of let's say a deep emotional scar. Let's say your father always used to tell you that you're stupid. Let's say your father always used to tell you you're stupid. Why you so stupid, girl? Why you so stupid? Why you can't be more like your sister or your brother? Why you can be, and always putting you down, always putting you down, always putting you down, right? And you heard that for years as a child. For years, you felt like nothing. Your dad made you feel like nothing, right? He made you feel inferior and all those things, and you never actually dealt with that. and you actually, let's say it sort of wrote on your heart, and by that I mean you kind of believed it, right? You kind of believed it. So you might now in the future, you're an adult, and somebody does something to make you feel, they may not have been intending to do that, right? But they made you feel stupid. They made you feel like if you don't know what you're saying or you don't know what you're doing. Now, this is not the person's intention, but you felt that way, right? You felt that way. You felt like this person trying to make me feel stupid or what? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And that came from a place of what you experienced with your father. And so that person making you feel like that would be a trigger, maybe something that they said or did would have been a trigger, and you will react a certain way. You might, and the person that you're dealing with might even watch you and say, why are you overreacting like that? I didn't say anything. All I said was, but to them it's nothing, but it was a trigger to you, and it took you back to your dad calling you stupid, right? And you acted and said, what you trying to say? You trying to say I'm stupid? And the person watching you like, they're like all confused, like, excuse, take it down. I didn't mean that. That's not what I was trying to say. But you, in your heart and your mind, you were convinced that's what the person is doing, right? Because something that they said or they did, or it could even be their tone, right? Because your father made you feel so, was used to degrade you and, treat you like that. Sometimes even if people use a certain tone with you, and again, they're not intending to, be as any way, they just may be a bit assertive. You take that to mean you disrespecting me. And why are you talking to me like that? And you going off in a rant, and I don't want nobody talk to me. So, and the person kind of just had a rock back and say, oh, what's going on here, boy? And the person had to say, you're okay? Everything okay with you? Because they're shocked by your reaction. How many of you all could relate to a scenario like that? Now, I don't mean that particular situation, but I mean something that triggers you, and you realize, when you realize sometimes that you're being triggered by something that you haven't dealt with, sometimes the person reaction kind of show because the person's shocked. They're like, why are you acting that way? Like it's like weird to them, like, what? I didn't say anything, and the person trying to convince you that they didn't mean anything by what they said either, but you are totally convinced, because you have not dealt with that hurt, and that those lies that your father would have spoken to you as a child. You believed it. It was sort of written on your heart. It became part of your identity. And so even though you tried fighting it, as you grow up, anytime anybody said anything close to that or made you feel anything close to how your dad made you feel would be a trigger, right? So ladies, you have to identify what your triggers are, right? Maybe even as you're talking to me, as I'm talking to you, sorry, I don't want you to be too distracted. You could perhaps think and even write it down. Like, okay, I'm triggered when somebody says X to me, um, some of you, because let's say ex-husband or ex-boyfriend would always criticize the way you look, and you never look good enough for them. You're never pretty enough. You're never beautiful enough. And somebody might just come up to you and say, hey, why don't you fix your hair? I don't like how your hair looking today. And you're like, what happened to my hair? Nothing is wrong with my hair. And you going off in a thing, and nothing wrong, and the person just said, but no, I'm just trying to help you. The person just coming from a genuine place trying to help you. But again, you went through so much abuse with that. People, let's say your ex-husband or your boyfriend, or even again to your father or your mother, criticize how you look. You could never look good enough. You could never do anything good enough. So you're triggered, right? So ladies, those are not things to just throw in the back of your mind and ignore and try to just walk through life and think that it has been dealt with. It seems as though it has been dealt with, but when a trigger comes up, you would realize and be able to identify that you have not dealt with it, right? And so what I'm going to go through now, and maybe you could write down, oh gosh, I didn't see what that person said. She said, I'm triggered by something with her father. And it's good to know, people go through their whole adult life and they don't realize the things that trigger them, and they don't even realize why. right? So it would be a good thing. Listen, it's good to spend some time with yourself and do some searching, you, yourself, and God. And you write down with a piece of paper, why do I feel this way when people say X? I don't know what your X is. Why do I always feel this way? Why do I feel so hurt when people do, right? And try to remember why. Why do I feel that way, right? And deal with it. It could be that that thing that you went through, maybe as a child or in your previous marriage or in your previous relationship, or with your parents, has become a part of your identity, and that's something you need to deal with. You need to start to believe, ladies, that you are who God says you are, not who your father said you are, not who your mother says you are, your ex-husband, your ex-boyfriend, in some cases, your friends. You are who God says you are. And you have to begin to know him to know who you are. To know who you are, you have to find out who that is through God, through knowing, having a personal relationship with him, right? So I'm just gonna go through some things to help you to identify maybe if you are actually healed from past relationships or not, and what you can do to be healed, right? And how you could walk out of those past traumas and things that you're dealing with, right? First thing, one of the first things, well, obviously I went through dealing with it. The first things I started saying, right? Don't dismiss it. Don't dismiss your feelings, your emotions. Don't minimize it. Excuse me, deal with your emotions. Don't try to distract yourself. Don't try to numb your feelings. You need to deal with them. You need to know your triggers, so on, right? Um, Next thing, you need to take responsibility for your own behavior. I think I kind of mentioned that before, right? There's always like a little voice whispering to us, telling us, don't make yourself vulnerable by admitting what you have done wrong in this situation. People always just naturally try to take themselves out and they blame the other person, right? Because you put the blame, the person hurt me. Yes, it might be them. Yes, they might have been the culprit and they are the ones who would have maybe hurt you, cheated on you, um, physical abuse, emotional, mental, right? But you still have to take responsibility for what you have done wrong and your actions in that situation. How did I get there? How am I always ending up with this type of man? How am I always ending up with this type of friend? Right? You have to own up and take responsibility for how your actions affects others without trying to defend yourself with excuses, right? Ladies, it's not an easy thing to do, but you have to do it. Take responsibility for your part in the situation, right? Now, with children growing up with parents who, I mean, that's something I speak about all the time on these calls. For those of you who are new, I always talk about parents and how parents can affect the lives of their children, and then, well, children, if they don't deal with it as adults, you could go through your whole life being affected by what your parents would have done or said to you, um, growing up. And so, honestly, children, they don't have any part to play. They don't. Children just at the mercy of their parents, right? And it's just unfortunate, but not all parents know how to show love and know how to be good parents. And so as a child, you didn't do anything. You weren't to blame for having a bad father, a father who might have been abusive or call you names or whatever, call it. You know, you don't have to take responsibility for that. You didn't do nothing, right? However, as an adult, once you start to realize, because as a child, even though your parents sometimes do wrong, you still see them as perfect. Some children, they still love daddy, they still look up to daddy, even though, and mom, even though they know their parents have faults. As an adult, you start realizing, wait, now my mother and father was real off, boy. Look at the things they used to tell me, right? How many of you, as an adult, you sit back and you start to think and you're like, wait, now my father tell me some real out of time and things. And you even tell yourself, I would never tell my child that, right? And I hope that is the case, that you never do to your children the same things that your, let's say, toxic parents might have done to you. right? But as an adult, you cannot blame anybody for your situation and your circumstance. You cannot. You have the power of choice, ladies. You always have the power of choice of what choice to move on, a choice to believe. You have a choice to educate yourself, to get knowledge. You have a choice to seek help. You understand? You are never at the mercy of one person. There's too much resources out there, too much various ways and places and people that you could get help from, right? And so many times we do have a part to play when we end up getting hurt sometimes in situations. Sometimes it could be your part could have been ignoring the signs, right? Your boyfriend refused to give you can't watch his phone. Not that you're asking for it all the time, but from the time you reach for that phone, even if it's to just find a number or something, you can't touch his phone, right? You're always hiding it. You have no access to it. Now, I'm not saying you're being a snoop and you want to just be in his business, but why every time I reach for your phone, it's like a secret. I can't, what, you know what I mean? Or he always going out and he can't tell you where he was. Or let's say he told you he was with his cousin, and a couple months later he talked to his cousin and say, well, yeah, he remember he was with you, and your cousin is like, no, he wasn't with me. I didn't see him for a whole year, right? And you ignore things like that. You have to take responsibility for that because those were signs. And listen, ladies, let me tell you something. Many times there are signs that somebody, let's say, is being unfaithful. But if the person just being outright abusive to you and telling you, calling you names, degrading you, insulting you, telling you you're no good, the ability to leave that relationship, the choice, the decision is in your hands. You can move on, right? And so you have to take responsibility for why you stayed, even though you were being mentally abused, physically abused, emotionally, whatever it is you're being, you have to take responsibility for that. Nobody can take, you cannot blame him. You have to blame yourself because you stayed. Not blame yourself for what he did to you, but I mean, as long as you didn't want to start over, as long as you stay, right? We'll at the end we'll get to chat and work out these things, ladies, right? As long as you stay and you know you're aware of the abuse that you're getting, you are making a choice, right? You don't have to start over. You just do not just leave. You are worth so much more than some man calling you stupid and ugly. That's not acceptable. How being with nobody is better than being with somebody calling you stupid, somebody who's cheating on you. You have to see yourself as valuable, as worth love, as somebody not, you don't deserve that, right? Ladies, you didn't do anything to deserve that, right? Um, so you have to own up to your responsibility. And ladies, this is important. Your mistakes do not define you. That your mistakes don't define you. You could be somebody with the best intentions, a well-meaning person, and you could still mess up sometimes, right? So you could have gone into the relationship and maybe naive, not seeing these signs, not knowing, having good intentions to have a great relationship with this person, and things didn't work out. It's not your fault. But your mistakes should not define you and the rest of your life. Making a mistake in a relationship or fail, even in a job or whatever, doesn't mean that you're a failure. You're not labeled now a failure or broken or messed up because you've been in a messed up relationship. So excuse me, you cannot allow those things to write in your heart now and define who you are, ladies, right? But you do have to take responsibility in the moment and do some introspection and say, well, why did I stay? What made me think, right? What made me think that it was okay for me to stay in such a situation? What does it say about how I feel about myself that I stayed in that situation? You have to ask yourself some real questions. Or why can't I say no to people? Why is it, what about me and my personality makes it difficult for me to say no, even though I really don't want to do something? I say yes. What it is, you have to start asking yourself these questions, right? Yes, Natasha says some stay for the sake of their children. But hear what? you are staying in an abusive relationship or with a man who is continually cheating with you, and you are saying you are doing it for your children, but sometimes it could be the worst thing for your child. Because what your child is growing up seeing is you being abused, being called names, and especially both your boy children and girl children could be affected by that. The girl child could think, well, that is normal. So listen, when your girl child see your husband calling you dumb, pushing you, cheating on you, when she meets somebody and they cheat on her the first time, she might actually say to herself, well, I guess this is all a part of love. You know, some people have in their twisted thinking of what love is and passion and relationship. They think that this is all part of love. The little push is passion. The push me and I fall down is because yeah, Ayana said she grew up seeing her mom happy and unmiserable. And you think, well, this is what marriage is. This is normal. And your children think that this. So you say you're doing it for the children, but your children are suffering, right? And your children, if you give them a chance to be open with you, sometimes perhaps they would say, because they're children who don't see what's going on behind closed doors, right? Things could be looking normal in the home, but daddy cheating or mommy cheating on the outside or whatever. And so when you split up, they're confused. They don't know what's going on because all you're hiding good. But there's some children who see the abuse and experience it firsthand. They see mommy crying and telling daddy, why are you doing this to me? They know about the outside child. They have about two half brother and half sister, right? And if you were to sit down with that child, the child would say, mommy, why are you taking all this from daddy? Why you feel you have to take this, mommy? Mommy, let's go now. What they want is for you to go and live somewhere with them so they can be happy. They want peace. And you saying you doing it for the children, right? And it's actually not. It's actually not. It's actually more of a selfish act. You might be thinking that but it's actually more of a selfish act to leave the children in that situation because they grow up with the wrong perception of what marriage is, of what love is, of what a man is. They think, all men like that. It does cause more harm than good in most cases, right? It causes more harm than good, right? So take responsibility for your behavior, ladies. Don't allow your mistakes to define who you are. There's a flip side to that. There are people who don't like to say sorry and they don't like to own up. But the flip side is people who quickly say sorry. They're quick to say sorry and they think that that's it. That should patch it up. But saying the word sorry, there are people like that. They feel, they're quick to say sorry. But the sorry is only really sorry if you don't continue doing it. If you say sorry quickly, right? No matter quick, you go, oh yeah, sorry. Forgive me, right? Let me move on, right? But when you say that sorry, let me move on, what you really saying is, all right, let me done this now, I done, sorry. You're just saying the right words because sorry is what you have to say. But it doesn't mean that you've dealt with or faced your actions or said to yourself, well, okay, what I really do here, boy, you just want to get over it quick in the moment. So you say, right, nice. I hope I get to talk to you all after. So you say sorry quick, but the other person is still hurting. The sorry not really cutting it. Just saying the word sorry, guys, don't always cut it because what they say, actions speak louder than words. And so if your whole life you saying sorry, but you still keep doing the same things, that sorry means nothing, right? Sandra, we will talk after. She said, what if the person just like to quarrel, right? Right. So that was taking personal responsibility for your behavior and your part in the hurt, right? Even though you are the one that was hurt. Here, the next one. You have to stop taking someone else's shortcomings personally. It's not always about you. You'd find that people who have dealt with a lot of hurt and rejection, they think everything is about them. They walk into a room, especially people who've dealt with rejection, hurt and abuse, that kind of thing. Especially, yeah, you walk into a room and people talking, and if this is you, you can identify, right? And when you walk in, they stop talking and automatically think they was talking about you. And you have actually gone down a whole world in your head already, right? Or you walk into a room and you say good morning. The person who you said good morning to didn't hear you or even see you because let's say they're preoccupied. And that take you down a whole road. You see, they feel they're better than me. They don't like me. They feel like this and that and that. That is people who are dealing with insecurity, rejection, and certainly you have not been healed from past hurts. You are carrying around a serious, well, it's like a spirit of rejection, right? Um, this is something, ladies, that we all have to um come to the realization of, right? That even people who love you will say insensitive things to you and hurt you. How many of you all have discovered that by now? If you're alive more than 5 years, you've discovered that, right? Even people who love you do and say insensitive things that hurt you. So somebody saying something insensitive to you or something hurtful to you does not mean that they don't love you. What it means is they have issues. It's not always about you, right? So you have to stop taking someone else's shortcomings personally, right? If you're still living in with past hurts, you assume responsibility for what the other person, for their shortcomings, for what they are doing wrong because of their brokenness, their hurt, or whatever. They're not, they need fixing too. But you always take personal responsibility. He said that, or he did that, or she did that because of me. They don't like this, or something I did, or some. So you can't separate their shortcomings from your hurt. You always think it's a personal attack. You always taking everything personal, right? Not realizing that just like you are working through certain issues, the people in your life that you love and love you, they have personal issues too. They work it through. They're not perfect either. How many of you are married? How many married people we have on the call? We have, gosh, this phone, sorry. Right, we have 83 ladies here. How many of you all are married? Let me see the married people. Yes. Felicia says she's married. Kim is married. If you were to add up all the years of married people here, it'd probably be a lot. Who else married? Let me see any more married ladies. Kristen, my daughter's name is Kristen. Natasha is married but living separately, right? So we have a few married ladies. I've been married for 20 years, 21 years this year, right? And I'm sure my husband loves me, right? He's listening to me right now. I'm sure he loves me. Sorry about that, Priya. But he does and says insensitive things or things that hurt. It does not mean that he does not love me. What it could mean that he's being insensitive in the moment. It has nothing to do with me. You understand? Right? How many times you have said insensitive things to people that you care about and you actually said it and you regret it after? Right? How many of you all? You're not that you don't love the person, you find the person great. You find, it could be a friend, it could be a parent, it could be a present partner, your boyfriend, your husband, right? You have no beef with them, but you just lots of times, Michelle said, but you just in a moment you could be grumpy, it could be that time of the month, you could have a headache, whatever, you're hungry, you know how women is getting when they're hungry and sleepy, and you said something insensitive, something really hurtful that you really didn't mean, but it hurt the person though. It really hurt them, right? And it actually makes them feel a certain way, like, okay, why would you say that? What's wrong with me, right? So if you look at it on the flip side, ladies, it's not always about you. It could be that that person themselves, they have shortcomings and they are not perfect. But when people are walking around with hurt and rejection, everything is about them. They cannot overlook one single word that somebody said that might be, they must have answers. So you must find out why. Why did you say that? What did you mean? Why did you mean to make me feel this way? Because everything have to become a thing. That's because you are walking around with a spirit of rejection and you have not been healed from past hurts. There's some things you just throw aside. You have to believe that there must be somebody in your life that love you. and not because the person says something hurtful, you have to turn it into a thing. It could be them. It could be them with the issue that need help, right? Um, but sometimes people take personal responsibility and they say things like, if they had loved me more, or if they love me, they would never say that, right? And that's not on them. That's on you. That's how you feel about yourself, right? So you make statements like, if they had only loved me more, if they were more, if they cared about me more, right? Um, so you start now, you start to realize that, wait now, I am really not over this thing, right? When you start asking, saying, making statements like that in your heart, or you say, you know what, if I wasn't this type of way, they would never do this. Or if I wasn't like, if I used to look different, they would have never treat me so. Or if I was more like, right, they would never treat, right? You understand where I'm coming from with that, right? Sorry, lady, somebody trying to message me and block the screen, right? So you all understand where I'm coming from with this, right? You cannot always take responsibilities for people's shortcomings. And if you are, ladies, if you're listening to me and this is you, if this is you still, you have not moved on. And you perhaps could have a spirit of rejection, right? Here, what's important, right? Although it hurts when someone does something like that, right? Excuse me. Don't mistake me. I'm not saying it should not hurt. Somebody says something hurtful, especially somebody you love, and it would hurt, right? But learn to understand and explain why what they said hurt you. And not only that, if you know the person that you're dealing with, understand why they did it too, where they're coming from, the kind of person they are. Because remember your partner, your husband, father, sister, friends, they have triggers too, right? And you're not looking for a perfect person. There's no such. So you have to learn to understand the people that you're dealing with, the people that you're close to. I'm not talking about the world that, but the people closest to you, whether it be a spouse, your best friend, your parents, your co-workers that you have to deal with every way. Get to learn to understand them, right? And they eventually you would be able to explain within yourself. You don't have to talk and say anything to them even. Why you feel the way you do when they say what they do, and you would even be able to understand why they said what they said, but you would not take it personally. And you're not going to go down a whole rejection road. You're not going to go down a whole pity party road. And woe is me, and they say that because I this and that. And it's not always about you. If you still feel like that, ladies, you're walking around with a spirit of rejection, right? Don't expect people to understand you when you don't even understand yourself, and they don't even understand you or themselves. You still working you out, and you expect people to understand you, right? So sometimes too, we expect too much from people. And again, because we try to take responsibility away from us. We want this perfect world, perfect scenario, perfect relationships. But sometimes it just means you have to deal with your emotions, learn to deal with them, right? When they come up, right? So next thing, that was number 2, right? Well, yeah, take personal responsibility. Number 2, stop taking other people's shortcomings personally. It's not all about you. And number 3, when you moved on and you realize that you're out of a cycle, this is especially for relationships and friendships, right? Toxic people are no longer attractive to you. A lot of times when people stuck in this, they hurt and they haven't dealt with, especially daddy issues, and if you had an ex-husband or ex-boyfriend who was a particular way to you, um sometimes it's not, you haven't dealt with certain emotions, right? And so toxic people actually seem attractive to you. And so that answers the question, why do I always end up with this type of person? How come all my relationships just end this way? How come every man I end up with doesn't want me? Right? It's not that all men are like that, ladies. You find those type of men, something about them in the beginning, something about them you find attractive, right? How many of you all have asked yourself that question? Just be honest with me in the chat and type it. How many of you have asked yourself that question? Well, Yeah, I mean, they could call it a curse. I hear you, but it's actually much more practical than a curse, right? Um, how many of you have asked that question, right? Abby said, "Who? How come I always ending up with these kind of people?" And it doesn't necessarily have to be a relationship. It could be like a romantic relationship. It could be friends. All your relationships end up in a bacchanal or something. Always the same kind of scenario over and over and over. And you keep asking yourself, well, how? These men attracted to me or what? No, you attracted to them. And it's hard to own up to it, ladies. It's very hard, right? But this type of thing most likely comes from low self-esteem. You actually subconsciously expect people to treat you a certain way because you don't think that you are worth the respect. You don't see yourself as highly valuable. You don't see yourself as precious. You don't see yourself as, let's say, worth a king. They have they have them some women who see themselves as all that, and them they're not settling for anything less than, as I say, a certain grade of person, however you want to call that, right? That could be a whole other story. But I'm talking about the women who you feel that you could only attract this type of person. So you see yourself at a level then, right? And there might be a certain guy that you might like, you might see, let's say somebody you work with in your office, somebody in your neighborhood, somebody you bounce up in church, perhaps, right? Let me say a deacon in church who, to you, he seems like, his life all together and perfect, and he's a real man of God. But you're not even going to try to track him because you don't think he would ever like you. Or let's say the guy in work who look like he have everything together, like he all polished and, he looking dapper and have everything, all together. You're not even going to try, even though you like him, because you think he would never like you. How many of you all have been in that situation? You think, you know what? Let me stay here. Let me don't even try for this. Let me try for this. Right? Yeah, you kid down now, you kid down. And you watch him and you say, nah, that I can't get you. I'm not even gonna try. I can't even take that rejection. You wouldn't even try it because you're so convinced you'll never get through. So your level is here, and you're never ever even gonna try to shoot for here. Right? Me, track man. Swap and what wrong with a woman tracking a man? I think we had some calls about that already. I don't see nothing wrong with a woman tracking a man. She just has to do it tastefully and not too obvious. But she could try little things, right? We've been through that already, right? Um, yeah. So, ladies, have you ever felt like that in your life? Or do you feel like that now? Talk to me. Tell me in the comments. Like you feel that there's a level that you really can't, nothing wrong, right? Somebody say nothing wrong with women showing line. Girl, I don't know what I'm to them, You gotta shoot your shot, you gotta try a thing, you gotta do your thing outside there. You gotta make yourself notice. Even if you're tracking, when I say tracking, I don't hard tracking like getting the man number and texting him and thing. Even if it means to make yourself noticed, just walk by his desk slowly, just slowly, and when you pass, good morning, good morning. You might have never see you before that day because you're always passing behind the desk because you didn't want him to see you, right? I'll give you all a joke, right? One of the places I used to work as a much younger person was a travel agency, right? Most of their customers were very high-end customers, all almost all within the 1% bracket, right? Almost all. And they had this guy who used to come. He used to travel a lot, right? He used to travel a lot. And listen, the man was handsome and very charming, very personable. He made everybody feel special, right? He was wealthy, a wealthy businessman, but he was young. I don't know I think he probably would have been about 30. And at the time I might have been about 20, 21, maybe 22, maybe 22, right? Might have been in his early 30s. And my desk was the first one by the door, right? And it was a testament of how I felt about myself at that time. And I remember, so when he come in, he would talk to everybody, right? And I used to say, this man unreal. You can't be so good looking and so nice. I used to say, nah, this is one of them, them serial killer movies where the man perfect and it, I just can't believe he was like too good to be true, right? And so he would come through the door and he would chat with everybody and stuff. And I wasn't like his agent. He would deal with the bosses, right? But he would still come. When he come through the door, he would sit down by my desk sometimes, right? Because my desk here by the door and they have a chair on the outside, on the other side of my desk. And he would sit there and say, oh, you're going on, Nika. And guys, you want to know how I felt when he was talking to me? Because he was so damn good looking, right? So I looking into what I consider his perfect face. I used to feel like doing this when I talked to him. Like, yeah, I'm good. How you going? Yeah, good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I used to want to say, okay, hurry along. Hurry along. I used to want to say, move right along. Don't talk to me too long. This is how I've been really transparent here. This is how I used to feel, right? Like I watching him and he looking so flawless, right? For me, everybody have a different taste. You might say, man, say, girl, you mad. You might say, girl, not nice about him. But to me, he was a perfect man, right? And I talking to him and I studying, he looking at my flaws. I thinking about my flaws too. And I just wanted to say, the perfect man, how you look now, you know what I mean, right? It's not a perfect man. And I was young then too, so and I sitting there and I thinking, don't watch me now, gosh. And I want to say, I want to call him by name and say, gosh, go quick now, don't talk to me. That's how I felt. So I actually felt, this is how I felt, I'm being honest with you all. I felt unworthy for him to talk to me. I didn't want him to talk to me because I felt like ugly compared to him. I've been transparent and I felt like when he talking to me, all he's seen is my flaws. He's seen the pimple hair, he's seen the teeth, that's why I thinking. So, I mean, I was in a place there of great insecurity and certainly seeing things, not only that, seeing things after the flesh, right? And I didn't think much of myself, um, especially physically. I really didn't think much of myself, so I didn't want to have any dealings with him, right? And so sometimes, and I mean, it didn't come from a place of hurt or anything. It was just insecurity, right? But you ladies, sometimes because you've been put down so many times that your words or your parents crush your words and your value. Your parents deal with that from young, no value, crushed, right? So you don't think of yourself in a certain as valuable, as precious, as worth a lot, as worth the best, most eligible bachelor in Trinidad and Tobago. You think this is you, and this could never be you, right? And so you are actually attracted to people who you think on a certain level. And so that's why you end up getting yourself in the same cycle with the same type of guy, right? When you start to heal, ladies, you will notice a shift in the people that you are naturally drawn to. When you start to heal and deal with your view of yourself and that pain that, let's say, a past relationship or even parents cause you, you realize that you would start to gravitate towards a different type of person, even a different type of friend. So not just relationship, but you would even find yourself making friends with different type of people. And if right now, ladies, all your friends toxic, all of them have issues, all of them is drama, all of them, if it's not one thing, is a next. If one of them with 3 man, the next one, is an alcoholic, the next one. I'm not saying go and look for perfect friends, but here what you will start to find that you will just naturally not gravitate towards the drama. And that the people that you end up becoming friends with, they kind of allow for a peaceful environment, for a fruitful friendships where you all encourage each other, help each other, draw each other closer to Christ, to better values, right? It will just become natural. But if you're still walking around as a hurt, broken person, you will end up gravitating towards hurt, broken people. So look at your lives, ladies, right? And look at your friends, right? You'd realize that toxic people no longer have the same appeal to you. And you'd realize that that's a sign that you're starting to heal and really realize your words and who you are. So I'm not saying totally diss your friends who might be still going through real issues and stuff, right? But your relationship with them would more become, you're there for advice. You're there if they need a shoulder to lean on, but you can't find yourself in the toxic circles anymore. You can't do it. It's just not you anymore. And that's because you raise your level and you now see yourself as a free person, a happy, healthy person. And you just can't find yourself in these unhealthy situations, right? So that's a natural thing. Last um, one of the signs that you are healed, ladies, and you're ready to be on that road of healing, you start reaching out for support more rather than isolating yourself. One of a sure way to know that you're still not dealing with your hurt properly is to isolate and to hide, to isolate yourself and not reach out, right? From the time you start to reach out and let people in to your emotions too, it's, you should cry on your own, you should deal with your emotions on your own. But it's always good to have a friend who could offer you good advice, wisdom, godly wisdom, right? Who have your best interest at heart, that you could cry with too. Let people in. You could bust down crying with that person. You know this person not going to judge you. You know they're not going to say, well, you deserve it. You look for that, right? But they're going to give you some good advice and help you. And you could just cry with the person and put your head on their shoulder and you could sob and you could cry. And you're willing to open up. You're willing to share. And it's no longer you hiding and isolating, right? Isolation is not dealing. I'm sure many of you all have said, you see me, this is your solution. I done. I done. I home every weekend. I just go and watch Netflix and eat my ice cream. Right? That is your way of coping. Them ain't see me this weekend. Everybody had to be called. Where you? Where you? Where you? Right? And you're making up stories. Well, yeah, I have a project to finish. I have this to do. But what you want to do is just isolate and not Asabi. I see those eyes, Asabi, right? Right? Your solution is to stay in your room, eat ice cream, and watch Netflix. That's not dealing. That's a cover up. That's also a cover. That's also numbing. Eating the ice cream and all and watching Netflix. That's a way to numb the pain. That's not dealing with the pain, right? From the time you let somebody in, right? I was talking to somebody recently, and all the person, I didn't offer no advice. All the person do was talk to me. The person just talk and said what was going on. And they cry, they self-heal and they didn't even know. They, like, okay, the person say, okay, I want to talk to you, whatever, right? And so I listened and I waited to offer advice. But they talk, they offer their own solution, they cry thing. And when they finished, they was like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. I feel like I'm free. And I literally did nothing. All I did was listen. But what it was is that the person was able to finally let those emotions out. And it's good to say certain things, to hear yourself say certain things. It's okay to make covenants with yourself too and say, I will never. I know people like to say, I never say never. I don't like people to tell me that. I could never say never. I I will never say never. I could say never to certain things. I could say I will never cheat on my husband. Nobody can tell me I can't say that. I know who I am. I know who I am in Christ. I know who God made me to be. I know who is in me too, God. So I can make that statement, right? Some people hide behind makeup. Abby, that is very, very true. I think I mentioned that in a past session that I did as well, right? Where people go out there looking, watch man, wow. When you watch them, you think, wow, this person have it all together. But it's literally a cover. It's a whole facade, it's a shell. When you move all that hair and makeup, nails, all that, it's just a broken shell that out there performing. And social media is a big way to perform too, right? You social media, whoa, you could perform. You could put on a show. People could think you have the perfect life, and we know that. But by now, well, they figure out social media is a big lie, right? Oh my gosh, I hope you all figure it out. Anyway, so yeah, one of the signs that you are really ready to be free, ladies, you're really ready is that you open up to somebody, right? That you share your emotions with them, that you cry with them, that you Open up yourself even to outside advice, because hide behind my glasses. Donna, that's interesting, right? um, Sometimes you cannot see your own flaws. So many of you all have realized that, right? You don't see your own flaws. Sometimes when you let people in, now not everybody, yeah, because not everybody is for you, and you cannot trust everybody. But when you let somebody in that you trust, and you ask that person their honest opinion about certain emotions that you might express, or certain ways that certain behavior patterns that you might have, they're able to help you to see your flaws better, and you could deal with it, right? It's always good to have somebody like that in your life. And again, that cannot be everybody, because not everybody for you, right? But reaching out for support, asking for help rather than isolating. Ladies, you know you're on your road to healing. If you are still isolating, you are hiding and you are not dealing. Isolating and saying, well, I'm done with everybody. Yeah, you can't trust nobody out here. That is not somebody who is healed. That's still a broken, hurt person, right? It happens a lot too with church hurt, right? Church hurt is a real thing. Institutionalized hurt, right? It's a real thing. When you've been in a church for years and you've been hurt by the leaders or your friends in the church or whatever, it's deep, because these people like your family, you trust them, and you really have high expectations of them. And when they hurt you, I've met many people who say, well, I done with church, me going to no church again. I not, or if they go to a church, they never open up ever again. They would go sit down, leave, taking the message and leave. Like, I don't want to make no friends with nobody, because they think that they're gonna get hurt again. You have not dealt with your hurt in your past church, or let's say your past job. It could be in a job too, where you get plenty of abuse in your last job, or people bad talk you or whatever, and you go in your next job and you just sit down on your desk and you work, you pack up after you leave, okay, bye everybody. Refuse to open up to anybody, refuse to make friends, because you think it's going to be a repeat. And if it is that it has been always a repeat, right? If you keep going from church to church or job to job and getting hurt, you are the problem. Ladies, you are the problem. Okay? So that brings me to the end. Let me just quickly go through, quickly summarize for you all, right? Do not dismiss your hurt or your trauma. Do not minimize your emotions. Cry if you have to. Do not use distraction tactics. Do not try to numb the pain or keep busy. Or some people try to move to a whole new country and think that's going to be the solution. The problem is in you, so you're just taking it to the next country you're going with, right? Going to, sorry, right? Once you are hurt to the point of feeling powerless, convinced that you're not enough, worthless, sinful, all those things, it has to be dealt with. You have to dealt with. You have to face those things head on, because that is trying to write on your heart and affect your identity. You can't ignore your hurts. You have to know your triggers. Take responsibility for your own behavior. Stop letting other people's shortcomings, stop taking other people's shortcomings personally. It's not all about you. Toxic people no longer attractive to you. And when you start to reach out and not isolate, you know that you're on your road to healing, right? I want to read one last scripture and I'm done, and I'm going to open up for questions, right? Done. This is in Matthew chapter 5. It says, therefore, if you bring your gifts to the altar, Matthew chapter 5, verse 23. If you bring your gifts to the altar, this is talking about going and pray. So if you're going to pray, right? Because this is like how they would, I guess you couldn't go to the altar without bringing some kind of sacrifice, but it's not like that now. So this is talking about if you're going to pray, right? And you remember that your brother has something against you, not that you have something against your brother. So you're going and pray. You're going, Lord. And while you're there, you remember, wait, me and this person in church, we don't even talk. But I didn't do nothing wrong though. It's them. But they don't even talk to me again, boy. Right? And you're going to pray. Hear what the Bible says to do. Leave your gift by the altar. Go your way. First be reconciled to your brother and then come back and pray. Agree with your adversary quickly while you are still in the way with him, lest your adversary deliver you to the judge, and the judge hand you over to the officer, and you're thrown into prison, right? I'll explain what that means um, in a bit. But here how serious God takes when we have um, misunderstandings with people and we hurt and we don't want to let go. Hear how serious God taking it. He say, if you go on and you pray and you remember, if you forget, right? If it come to you, he said, most likely he bring it to your attention first of all, right? So you're going to pray. He said, drop what you're doing. If it's a call you had to make, well, I didn't have phone in these days, so he said, go your way. Actually say, go your way, right? Forget prayer. Find the brother who offended with you and make amends with that person, then come back and talk to me. God is so practical. He's saying, don't leave. Hear what he says. Agree with your adversary quickly. So all he's saying here is settle matters quickly. Sometimes we walk around with hurt. Now, again, the parents hurt and ex-husband hurt. I know those things are, they're right on your heart. So you really have some soul searching to do, right? But when it comes to little things that come up on a day-to-day basis, the Bible actually encourages us to deal with our resolve issues quickly. Don't let them fester. And this whole talk about prison and they judging you an officer is talking about what happens to you spiritually when you have unforgiveness or you have grudges in your heart for somebody, right? It soon becomes a situation where it's a stronghold, and when offense gets in your heart, ladies, Satan can have his way with you. When, especially, you see, when, listen, if you have hate for someone, ladies, I know we're talking about hurt, and sometimes the hurt is so much that you build up bitterness and resentment, right? Listen, that's a sure way to put your hands in the hands of, to put your life in the hands of Satan. It actually says that you end up being a prisoner to this hate and to this bitterness, and it controls you, it drives you, and it actually gives Satan a foothold in your life. And so deal with your issues quickly. If you could deal with it on the spot, do it. It's not always in your hands. I know that, because remember, this wasn't even talking about if you have something against your brother. It says if you remember somebody has something against you, try to deal with it. It doesn't always work because you can't control the other person, but at least make sure that you put your cards on the table and say, listen, I forgive you. I have nothing against you. I don't want there to be any bitterness. And if you have anything, please forgive me for anything I did. And I forgive you for anything you did. Deal with those things. If you could deal with the day-to-day things one time, do it, ladies. Don't let it fester. We know that there's some long-term hurts that people deal with. And hopefully I was able to help you all with that based on what we went through today. But God takes these things very seriously, especially if it gets to the point of bitterness and hate. It's one thing for you to be carrying around hurt, but when you're carrying around bitterness and hate and unforgiveness, that's a different matter. It's going to start to affect your life in ways that you cannot imagine, right? And then you end up with spiritual strongholds that affect your life if not dealt with. When it becomes a stronghold, ladies, it's much more difficult to deal with. Hence the word stronghold, because it has a stronghold over you, your emotions, even your physical body, right? Ladies, listen to this. You cannot control what is happening around you on the outside of you. You cannot control the confusion around you. People might try to get into your life, but you can't control what is inside of you. You can control the emotions that go through your mind, your heart, your body. And when you let these things fester, it physically affects you. You get more headaches, more pains, more stress. So it's not a road you want to go down, ladies, right? And so this is something that you want to give to God and just let go and allow God to heal you, right? So I want to open up for questions or comments. I remember Michelle said that she